All right, on this episode of the Agile Podcast, we've got Scrum Master Jamie Leatherman, and that means at least one person is going to be upset on the internet, or one person and a cat maybe. Yeah. This is going to be an interesting podcast, just because I don't know where it's going to go.
We'll see.
Yeah. You don't often get to talk to people who've worked at companies that you've worked at in the past or in the future. It's weird. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be disturbing, hopefully. I was gone by the time that you worked at a company that I worked at. I was long gone. Only available through history or stories or my name on everything.
Yep.
The funny thing that I remember about the first week that I was not at the company anymore is I remember my employees, because I had hired the whole team when I was there. I remember my employees being like, oh yeah, they tried to say that they were the victim and they couldn't do anything because I was like a middle manager. I didn't really have any specific power or whatever. But the interesting thing to me was there's this thing about personal responsibility. I don't even know if we're even on a topic yet. This is what I do. There's this thing about victimhood. Like if you're going to let yourself become a victim, you don't have any power anymore. Like the whole world has power over you and you don't have any agency in your own life. Mm-hmm. And it's a way out. I don't know. I could be on either side of this. So on one side, it's like, yeah, there are things that I could have done in every instance to not be in that situation. On the other side, it's like, you need to get off your high horse there to assume that I had any power in the situation at all. Because if someone comes up and robs me at gunpoint, I'm like, what are you going to say? Well, you shouldn't have been there. Like, you're going to blame me for being there?
Yeah, that, like you said, your agency. What is your agency if you're being robbed? You have none. But in a job, your agency is as much power as you're granted in that role.
Right.
So if people are in a position of authority over you, what can you do?
Yeah.
And so there is part of there's certain things I can't say or do to people in leadership over me. Mm-hmm. So my agency is very limited.
The interesting part about this topic for me is from the perspective of a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master, just by their position, you don't have any authority, specifically any authority over anyone. So you can't just say, well, I don't have any authority, I can't do anything, because that's there's a certain part of your job that's built on influencing opinion. Mm-hmm. So this is a tough topic for me to take on.
Yeah. It's multi-layered because even in that company, as a Scrum Master, you weren't just a Scrum Master, you were a project manager.
Yeah.
You had to wear all these different hats. So you were given this authority that the Scrum Master position does not normally have. And so it's a conflict. Yeah. It's definitely a conflict.
Yeah, that's funny because I had a discussion recently with someone, not on the podcast. I was arguing with somebody. I don't know. It must have been social media because I was arguing with somebody. And I was talking about, is it possible to have product management, a role in product management, whether it's product owner or product manager or whatever it is, who doesn't deal with any aspect of project management? The argument I was having was the person was like, product managers are just another way to get rid of project managers and not pay, another way to save money and not pay project managers. Because there's some organizations that are, especially organizations that are run by developers, that say, well, we don't need Scrum Masters. We'll just have a development team member do that part-time. And then they have product people. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of just push all that project management, Scrum Master, team building stuff onto the product person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It goes back just to the principles of Scrum. Go to the Scrum Guide where you have the certain roles on the team, but then you join an organization like this, case in point, where, but we're also going to have a product manager, a project manager, which, by the way, you're that too, and everything else. So there's just too much going on. Yeah. It's not ideal, obviously. When
I was there, the development department didn't want to be told by anybody. I was going to say how to do things, but I think what I really mean is what to do or how to do it. Either one. Because they had product people. I don't know if they were called product owners. They had basically what was the equivalent of a chief product officer. Oh. So they had somebody who they brought in to supposedly be, he was a leadership team member, so he was supposed to be the chief of product, and he came from an industry specific firm to where he was supposed to be able to know what clients needed. Mm-hmm. And then he hired 2 people while I was there that were specifically product. And one of the guys left. And the other guy's still there. I'm sure they probably have more product people or whatever. But basically, those people had to go to war to basically get anything from the development team, because the developers basically were like, we know what needs to be done. You have a product vision. I don't really care about your product vision. I know what needs to be done, and I own the resources. So get out of my office.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I was that authority. I hold it all, and I say what happens here.
Yeah.
Cool. You're the business. We know what you want, but we know how to do it better. It was always that fight. It was always going on. It still probably is going on today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe not.
I don't know.
Because they have no authority to do it. It's not like they can sit down as a air quotes leadership team, air quotes, and say, hey, you need to be taking the product's roadmap and building off of that. Because again, development just does whatever they want. I don't know if they were doing or pretending to do SAFe when you were there.
Right. We actually managed to make it better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So when I joined, they had 3-4 development teams, and they were all just kind of in their own little, I hate the word, but silos. Right? We use that.
They were.
And so they were just working on their backlog stuff, pulling stuff in, and then they had their own POs. Well, the POs also happened to be the product managers under the CPO. Right. So the product managers, who are supposed to be at a higher level, worried about the project management from the stratosphere, were in the day-to-day, in the trenches with the team as the PO. So all these teams are working kind of like on their own. Whatever dependencies were existent, right? You didn't know about them. So you'd build something and then be like, it doesn't work. Oh God.
I knew about them.
All the time. That happened constantly. Well, so then, someone in the company brings up this idea of SAFe and, let's do scaled agile.
Yeah.
Well, of course they didn't want to use the actual SAFe model. Yeah. No. We can't do actual SAFe. Let's condense it and let's make it into our own custom thing. Okay, well, that's not how it works. So what you want to do is you want to custom scale your teams. I like it. Okay, so then I was tasked with, you figure it out how to do that. And I was like, oh my God. So I basically said, okay, well, in the background, we're going to use SAFe and we're just going to call it different things. So instead of calling it an RTE, we just called it a senior Scrum Master. Yeah. And then they started to build these job roles around these new made up titles, and then sent them to HR and said, hey, these are going to be the new official titles. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, here we go. Now we're making this like an official thing. Oh crap. So basically what ended up happening is we did end up scaling the teams to where, and when I say scaling, what I mean is we were able to bring them together and do our planning together so that we reduced redundancy, dependencies, all that. Yeah. But that's all it was. Yeah. We weren't really scaling, And in addition to having to be kind of their RTE or senior Scrum Master, as we called it, I was having to do all the project management stuff. I was having to report to product management and financials and cost and forecasting and all this stuff. And I'm like, I've never done this in my life.
Product stuff. Yeah, product stuff.
Yeah, so we were minimally successful in at least getting the teams together more than they ever had been, and bringing the product people into the same rooms as the lower level developers and making them talk. And getting the CTO out of the room and being like, no, you get out. And I would kick him out.
Yeah.
I say, no. You come in later once we tell you what we think we can deliver.
I was there when they rolled out SAFe. And basically, this is how they rolled out SAFe. Some SPC from somewhere, like whoever you are, Mr. or Mrs. SPC, like you did a wonderful job, came in to the leadership and they were like, hey, you guys need to learn SAFe. And the leadership went off. I swear to you, they were gone for 4 days, and they all got trained on SAFe, and they all came back, and they all had their cute little placard, and they're like, "See, you got these arts, and you got this portfolio, and this and this and this." And I was like, "We can't even do single team Scrum correctly. Why the hell are you even worried about scaling?" The interesting thing to me about your story was to go all the way back to the beginning. I'm assuming that none of that came up in the initial interview. I'm assuming the initial interview didn't pitch any of we've got these problems and this, and we really need someone to come in and solve all these issues and kind of run things. I'm assuming that's not the way it was pitched.
No, not one time. Yeah. In fact, when I interviewed, it was, hey, you're going to have one team, and it's for this new project that we're starting, and, I sold, down the river on that one, how awesome it was going to be and how much money it was going to make. And yeah, I was going to have one team. I had no idea I was coming in to solve all their scaling issues, quote, air quotes. And it's like you said, you can only scale something that's working.
Yes.
So yeah, but no, I wasn't told any of that. I was going to have my team, and it ended up that the team never panned out. The project got canned.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, okay, well then solve all of our scaling problems. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, they did that when I was there. There's a great term that is not used enough in day-to-day life of corporate America and professionals. And histrionic is the term. Yeah, histrionic. Yeah.
I have to Google that one.
Yeah, no. We'll do it right now. The overwhelming desire to be noticed and often behave dramatically or inappropriately to get attention. Yeah, I would say because the individual or individuals, that could be talking about anyone, it doesn't really matter, had the overwhelming desire to be noticed and then often behaved dramatically or appropriately in order to get attention when they didn't feel they were getting the attention that they needed. I would say that they probably did that when they would produce a product and the product would be total garbage. This is my brain at work now, because once I make an incendiary statement and then I want to wheel it back, because I can see, I feel bad because I worked with these people as coworkers, team level coworkers, for years before they were ever in management or C-level executives. So I understand that like they're just trying to do the best that they can for clients that they're familiar with and people that they know that they've worked with for more than 10 years. But that need to get attention, to be like, oh, I know what, we don't need to look at metrics to figure out what to build, to figure out what monthly active users are using whatever feature. We don't need to look at that. I know what the best feature to build. And we have a whole wing of people that we pay to do product work, to talk to customers, and coupled with all the sales and support and et cetera. But I don't need any of those. I know what to do. And then when something doesn't go their way, then they behave dramatically to kind of, to pull back in. So, but the more dangerous side is like all those, like the product people and the Scrum Masters and all that kind of stuff, they should have never been under development in that environment, because they're sabotaging themselves. Yeah. Wow, I just cut straight to the end of the podcast. Well, thanks for watching.
Lesson learned.
Oh, man. No, we can't do that. So you were brought in to deal with a product that didn't exist.
Correct.
And then the product ended up not existing.
Correct.
So then what happened? Like, where was the pivot from there?
Yeah. So I was there for about 2 months before I was told the project's not happening. And they kept kind of making me think, oh, no, it's still happening. We're waiting on funding. Funding.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what can I be doing in the meantime? So they would set me out on kind of these, like, before the whole scaling thing came up, they would set me out on these like side projects. Well, why don't you help the director of development write a guide for deployment? I literally created their ITIL document. Here's how we're going to deploy. It was our whole system of, because before there was one person who like had the magic finger for the button, and I'll put it in production.
It is me. I will put it in that production. No, it wasn't him. It wasn't. I know it wasn't him, but it was hilarious.
So I had to like basically go figure out what is the current state of how we're doing it. It was terrible. And then I had to go figure out, okay, well, what are industry standards? Yeah. And now what are we going to do? And I helped write this document for how we were going to deploy. So that was one side project. So that's one example of a few that they had me on. And so it's just kind of like doing like, busy work kind of stuff, helping them try to improve their processes. Well, then I found out there's a lot here we need to improve. So then I got it in my mind, you don't have me doing stuff. I want to try to improve the processes. So I went to the management and I said, listen, this is what I think I could be valuable here. And then they were like, okay, yeah, what ideas do you have? So then I tried to like build the bridge between development and product. Oh, I got in so much trouble. No, development. Their leadership, they were like, we don't, basically, it came down to, we don't want you trying to fix their problems. And I said, I'm trying to fix all of our problems. I'm trying to bring us together. What's wrong with that? It was like I was sharing their secrets.
It's like a one team. It's like we're all one team, and we should all behave. I usually steer away real hard on the podcast about talking about stuff like that. But I was like, if you know the management there, you know, like they never had a woman on their C-level executive staff that they took seriously. So it sounds real crappy to say out loud. When I was hired, a woman hired me. She went on to work for a large financial institution, but she hired me straight out of college, basically, and she stayed there about 3 years. And I remember when she gave her notice, like we went out to lunch or whatever, she's like, this company is never going to have any female executives. I have no future. She's like, I'm a manager. This is the highest I'm ever going to move up in this organization. They're never going to have somebody on their C-suite. I have no future here, so there's really no reason to stay here. At the time, you know, I was like 3 years into my career. I was like, oh, okay. What do I know? In retrospect, I'm like, yeah, why would you stay? You got 3 years. You made manager QAs now on your resume. Yeah, move on if there's not a future. She knew she was never going to be one of the boys that was running the company. And when it became apparent to her that that was not the way it was going to be, like, she was gone. Like, she didn't waste any time. You know?
Yeah. Same thing happened to me. I mean, when I interviewed, I was brought on by one of the boys, one of the guys in the club who I had worked for before, and he was a good friend of mine, and I really trusted him, and I thought he was awesome, and I was like, hell yeah, I want to work with you. But when I was pulled in, I mean, I was on the inside. I felt like that, you know, I had that vibe, felt really like part of the boys club, and they listened to me and valued my opinions. And you know, just felt like they really were, because again, I didn't have a team, so they were listening to all my recommendations about, okay, we need to improve process here. As soon as I went over to business and said, okay, we need to improve processes between the two. We need to fill the gaps. We need to fix these relationships, because you guys they don't even get along. I mean, they were like high school mean girls. As soon as I did that, they kicked me out of that boys club so fast. And then they would start to have, I mean, it was like a movie. It was like all the guys would get up, and it was like, oh, time for a boys meeting. And I would get up to go, and they'd be like, oh, no, we don't need you for this one. And I was like, oh, shit, like, I'm out, you know? And it was one of those things. And that's, you know, after I was there for a year, and afterwards, I had the same feeling, like, I'm not going to go anywhere here because I'm a lady. And they don't like when they are disagreed with. They don't like you coming in trying to tell them, hey, I see room for improvement here. You guys are really not getting this right. They go, no, we are. You know? So I felt the same way.
Yeah, your helpful ideas and your positive attitude are really not appreciated, Jamie.
Please get out of the boys club.
Yeah, please get out of my office.
Yeah. I was kind of happy to not be in the boys club anymore once they kicked me out. And then I could just like work. Then they tasked me with this scaling, air quotes, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this. I'm going to run with it. And we had success with at least what we did.
But scaling what? Like, they didn't have a lot of teams. I mean, but the way that we did it when I was there, because they weren't really a Scrum shop. They were like pseudo, so when we did like a kickoff to the start of a air quotes project, we would try to have everybody in the office, and we'd be in one room for the majority of the day, basically kicking off, you know, in their tiny conference room that was way too small for the company. I remember when they moved. I was with that company when they moved. They basically moved across the road. They actually moved into an equal size space. So I was like, well, this is not a good sign. Like, they moved to an equal size space. So like we're not going to be expanding or bringing on new team members or getting any relief anytime soon. And to bring us back way, way, way back to when they first implemented SAFe, like all the executives came back with their little laminated placards that they, you know, at the time they probably paid full price. So they probably paid $1,200 for the silly little laminated placard. But they came back and they were like, we have to do a PI planning, and we have 2-week sprints, so we're going to plan 10 weeks worth of work in the room and you know, in a day or half a day or whatever, because they were the typical type of management that were like, oh, I know the book says that it should take you 2 days to do PI planning, but I mean, 2 days is a little excessive. We know the work that needs to be done. You should be able to get that done in 1 day, right?
Oh.
one day, right? And one day is not 8 hours of work. One day is like 6 hours of work, right? With a lunch, so it's actually 5 hours of work. So you should be able to do that, and 5 hours is basically half a day. So you should be able to do your PI planning in half a day, right? That's basically the way that it worked. Yeah. So and we would come in for PI planning, air quotes PI planning, and we'd have our 14, 15 people in the room, all of our teams. There weren't really a bunch of teams, and the PI planning would start as, all right, you have 5 sprints. Here's the work you need to do in 5 sprints. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then they would give us the work and be like, so basically the team would work the first sprint and QA would nothing at all, because in the first sprint, the developers are still trying to figure out how they're even going to architect what they're being asked to build. So basically everything from the first sprint pushes to the second sprint. And then it's just an avalanche of missed dates and requirements. But at that point, it's just like every project manager that I ever worked for that promised a date that they had no idea what was involved in the work. So they promised a date that was just completely outlandish. And then they never would go back to leadership to say, well, my date, I didn't really talk with anyone about my date. I didn't really, try to figure out or whatever. I just kind of made it up. And the team, now they've looked at the work, they kind of figured out that date's not going to work. Here's a new date. Mm-hmm. They would never do that. The project manager would never do that. They'd just be like, the team is sandbagging it, and for some reason they can't make my date. I don't know what the problem is. I think you got some lazy team members.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a project management experience right there.
That's terrible. Yeah, I mean, so whatever PI planning they were doing, before I joined, they hired a agile implementation manager, and pretty much changed just the terminology in SAFe, mm-hmm. and started calling it something else, which I'm not going to say because it's proprietary. Oh. But basically changed everything from, we're not calling it PI planning, we're calling it like this big room session kind of thing. All the same crap, right? We're going to call it something different because we just don't like SAFe. Okay, well, SAFe works in different places. Why didn't you actually try to implement it and do it the right way? And it's because of things like that. It's because they would push work out from sprint to sprint to sprint, and nobody was going, why are we doing this? Right. Why is this happening? Yep. Let's go really inspect and let's fix it. No, mm-hmm. They were just, like you said, they were just blaming the team. Oh, the team doesn't know what they're doing, or the team's bad at estimating. I love that one. Well, of course they are. They're estimates. So when I joined and they were doing that, that was one of my first gripes, is like, why aren't we just doing a model that works? Yeah. And that's when they were like, well, you're just going to do your team when your team started. I'm like, oh, it never started. So, it's just like one of those things. But to like have an implementation manager that just is like, oh, we're going to change a few terms here, but we're going to stick to what SAFe is trying to do in theory. I was like, this is so stupid. It made no sense. It really made no sense. And I feel like that happens a lot in the Tampa Bay market, where they'll hire people that, I've got a little bit of SAFe training, and I've got a little bit of Scrum at Scale, and I got a little bit of this, and I got a little bit of that. Let's just make them all a hybrid. Yeah. Let's just try this thing out. And it can get really dangerous when, Agile is about experimentation, but if you're just throwing shit at a wall to see if it sticks, you're really doing a disservice to your people. And I feel like they did that a lot. Yeah, where we were.
I feel it's good to have these experiences, or at least it's good to have other people who have these experiences, so you don't have to have the because I came onto a project. I say project because the people that ran the project were all project managers trying to disguise themselves as people who knew how Agile worked. And when I came on, it was pretty obvious in the first week it was not going to work, because they were asking me for status reports. And they were asking me to do Gantt charts, and they did the same thing. They were like, don't talk to the product wing of the organization because they need to figure things out, and we don't want to be, let me try to remember how they worded it. Basically, if we have any hand in helping them create a roadmap, then if their roadmap doesn't meet all of its dates, then they'll put the blame on us completely and absolve themselves. I was like, is a big problem in this organization blaming? Is blame a big problem? Because if it is, maybe I'm in the wrong place. Because in order to create the best teams who can produce the best products, we've got to, this is the Dr. Deming thing, like we got to drive fear out of the organization. Like I don't have any room for anyone on any of my teams or that interact with my teams that are going to be doing this blame game nonsense. Okay? So if you want to do this blame game nonsense, cool. Let me get done with the team and I'll hang up the phone with these guys and put them aside. And then we'll have a separate meeting and we can talk about who wants to blame whatever. Because if you expect me to be the type of professional sports team coach who comes in and says, you know, we could have won the game if it wasn't for number, 27. He sucks. Oh, he's so bad. Like there's a reason you never see that because it's ridiculous. Number one. And number two, it's unprofessional. Number two, and number three, like nobody with that mindset is ever going to be able to get to success. I would love to be in an organization where they can have their people in their little silo and I'll come in and give me my little silo next to them and let's compete. You know what I mean? Let's be two sports teams playing the same sport and let's compete. And you keep your little mentality over here and I'll move forward with what everyone else is doing basically. And we'll see who produces results. Ohm and I have this thing about the hero developer. We go on and on about the hero developer. Like, you got to be the hero developer.
It's a real thing.
I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but I know I've mentioned it on the podcast before. Like, in this organization, I knew I was done. I knew I was done because they've just brought on their first product person who we were talking about before. It's like the chief product owner. He wasn't really. And you got to take that away from development in order to be a real chief product owner. But I remember I was sitting at a company meeting. Of course, just everyone was just standing around because they got no chairs for anyone to sit on at a company meeting because they didn't get an office space enough to hold the employees they have, although they want everyone to be in the office. Anyway, that's another story. And I remember the chief product person was talking. He was like, oh, we got a great future for the product because he gave us this function and he gave us this ability and he implemented this. And dude, everything he said was this one single person in the organization implemented all these features and rolled all these customers online. I'm like, you have a whole team of people who did that.
Yeah.
But when the C-level was announcing it to the audience of the entire company at a company level meeting, it was all just this hero developer. And I was like, oh, crap. Somehow I let this person take credit for all of the team's work, and I did not see this coming. And I was like, there's no way to recover from this. I knew at that. I don't know how long that was before I stopped working in the organization, but it must have not been long. But I was like, I'm done. I knew I was done right there in that. Because I was like, if the C level basically doesn't see anybody else, if everybody's just minions and it's just this guy is the hero, we're done, man. Everyone might as well start looking for jobs now because
it's toxic. And it's I mean, that is the worst kind of example where that happens. And that's obviously someone who's looking for the glory, that's looking for a promotion, that wants to be C-level. That's somebody that has allowed that kind of thinking to continue and to fester on a team. I mean, if you really care about your team, if you really care about being a team player, you in that moment would have said, wait, I couldn't have done it without my team. That kind of person didn't say that. So that says something.
Yeah, no, he didn't. Because that's what I remember at the time. I remember turning to my team member and being like, "Watch, he's not going to say anything about any." Because every other C-level executive in that meeting, when they got handed something like that, they turned around and thanked their team members. Yeah. I remember the chief of operations was handed off to the director or manager of support. I don't remember what his title was. Manager of support, and the support guy was like, "Yeah, well, we brought on some great people. And we got this guy on the phones now, and we got this guy on the phones now, and he's really great, knocking out of the park and stuff like that." And like that kind of stuff would happen. But then when it was up to the development guy, he was like, "Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah. Well, it was a lot of hard work, and I'm just gonna keep at it." And
that's blatant. I mean, that's blatant. And there's more like insidious examples, subversive examples, like on teams where they want to be heroes, and so they'll work weekends. Yeah. They'll work late nights. They'll work all night. Yeah. And then, of course, they have to post in the chat, guys, I'm not going to be until 10 because I was working till 2. And it's like, stop doing that. Stop doing that because you're making the rest of the team look bad. I'm not working till 2 a.m. Screw that. But now you've created a culture where the others feel like if they don't do that, they're not as good as you.
Yeah.
And you may still feel like you're a team player, or maybe you have something to prove. Maybe you're just bored and this is like your only hobby.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Like the people that really want to, like, oh, I worked on vacation. Hey guys, I'm in the mountains right now with my family, but let me take this call. No, like that's a little more like, hey, we see what you're doing and you're making it bad for everyone else. But like that example you gave, that's just blatant. Like, I don't care about my team. I want all the glory. And yeah, both are terrible.
Yeah. If you can go back and change something about your experience, like other than just not accepting a job in the first place, because that's not fair. That's kind of crap. Like, you know, what would you go back and change? I managed a QA department at the time, and I had a lead. And I would have burned a building down for her to keep her.
Yeah.
I would have torched everyone's car in a parking lot, everyone's brand new BMW in the parking lot they got from the second buyout. When nobody else got anything, no bonuses, no nothing. Like, the bonuses and all that stuff was gone by the time we got bought a second time. I specifically remember we were sitting in this tiny little conference room that was way too small for all the people involved in planning. Ridiculous, because there's people standing and whatnot in the room. And we were getting through the planning of a feature. I don't remember what the feature was. I wish I could remember what the feature was. But I do remember the feature was ridiculous. It was something like, if you don't have the feature configured, it's off by default. But if you have the checkbox, then it's on, but you can check the checkbox and turn it off again, or something like that. So the wording of the checkbox was something just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It was like, don't not show, or something like that. Don't not show. Development loves, at that company, development love to do like no, do whatever.
Double negative.
Yeah. They love doing double negatives in the configuration. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I was like, why don't we just, we want it to be off for everyone. Why don't we just default it off in the code if it's not configured, and then let the checkbox be enable. Check. Enable. Check. I was like, makes total sense. And we talked about it for not a lot of time, 10, 15 minutes. Because the configuration of the feature was rolled into the discussion of the actual feature. So we actually moved through it pretty quickly. We had the manager of development in the room and all the developers who were gonna work on it. We had everyone we needed in the room to talk about the component. And we all finally agreed on something. And we were writing the acceptance criteria for the story on the screen. And then this executive came in while we were writing it and was like, why are you calling it that? It should be called no default or whatever. And and then like immediately my lead, who is a brilliant person, she was smart, and she was smart, and she was like me, like she would not let things go when she had already spent time discussing. So she was like, no, we already spent time discussing, everyone in this room, and this, by the way, she was challenging him in front of the group of people and this is a team, this is a whole group, this is like 12 or 14 people.
Oh man.
So he just went to war. He just decided he was not going to lose this argument, and he was like, that's the most ridiculous. He started tearing into her in this meeting in front of everyone. And I don't remember if I was sitting next to her or from across the table, but I remember her eyes were welling up down here because she wasn't letting it go. And he was like, I'm the boss. I'm going to make this decision. This is my executive decision. This is what it's going to be called. Let's move on. We don't need to talk about this anymore. We wasted enough time talking about this. I remember she went back to her desk, and just like the tears were flowing by then, because that was the last item that we were talking about. And so like if there was something I could do again, it was I either would have went to war harder in that room to try to put myself in the middle. Usually I would put myself in the middle and take the heat, because I was like, oh, what are you gonna do, fire me? Like, yeah, I had already prepared to be fired for like 2 years in advance, and like I was ready at any point to be like, meow, come to my office, meow.
Oh god. You do that really well.
Yeah, but I remember exactly what happened. And then she came in, a week and a half later, and she's like, hey, I need to see you after the stand up. And I knew immediately. And so my first regret was not standing up with her in that meeting to be like, stop, we already talked about this. I mean, I did, but I didn't really put up much of a fight, to be honest. Again, my memory's real foggy. But my other regret is when she gave her notice, he was like, I want to talk to her. I I was like, no, no, you're not. I was like, she's quitting because of you. I was like, you're not going to, I was like, there's no way that I'm bringing a female employee into your office so you can berate her after she's quitting because you berated her. I was like, it's not happening. It's like, not in any world that I'm a part of is not happening.
Yeah.
I was like, there's literally nothing you can do to me. Not happening. He did end up talking to her or whatever, but that same day that she quit, I wish I would have been like, hey, I quit too. I'm done. Yeah. I understand, like, I should have done whatever, and I kind of understand, like, the way the organization has kind of been restructured. I'm kind of powerless to prevent whatever, because, like, my budget got taken away and a bunch of other things got taken away, and I kind of, like, was like, oh, well, we'll live with it and see what happens. I got rolled under development when I wasn't under development before. I was like, well, we'll see. I want to be positive about it. And I wish I would have been like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't, like, there were plenty of people leading up till then that quit without having a job. Like long-term employees that just quit, no job. They were just like, I quit. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. I think for me, what I would have done differently is, after I got kicked out of the boys club, I think I wouldn't have let it bother me so much because, after that happened, I was like, I didn't feel like I had their ear anymore, and there was, what little power I did have was completely stripped away. And so they kind of treated me like, great idea, not kind of thing. And so, like, it was just kind of like, go do this stupid menial task, whatever. And finally, I had built back enough trust with them, which I didn't need to do. But anyway, they were like, okay, we want you to help bring these teams to a point where we're trying to scale. So what I would have done differently is not given a shit so much. Like, I think I would have spoken up more. I think I would have said a lot more in the way of, like, to that example, exact same scenario happened with us in one of our big room sessions. Where probably the same guy fought us tooth and nail on acceptance criteria, on how to do something. I mean, Scrum 101 is you do not tell the developers how to solution something, and you're the leader, you're the guy.
You're not even building anything. You
aren't. Yeah, exactly. You aren't building it. Get out of the day-to-day. Get your hands off our computers. You hired these people. Why don't you trust them? Why don't you trust them to do the job you hired them to do? So I think I just would have spoken up a lot more and said, get out of here. Get out. You are not involved. You're not invited until the end. We will present to you what we think we can do. And I think it was just kind of that culture that had been allowed for so long. You're just allowed in the room whenever you want to be. And it's like, no, sometimes you need to just have your team figure some stuff out first. And, like, keep the leaders out. Like, let us figure out what we can do for you, what's reasonable, what's sustainable. But if leadership doesn't care about what's reasonable and what's sustainable, they're going to barge in every time. And that's a deeper problem.
Well, the deeper problem there is they don't care about you.
Yeah.
They don't care about you, the collective you, meaning you and the team. They don't care about the team. They don't care how you feel about it. They don't care about that. This is, like, why after I left, like, my whole team quit. Like, in the next 3 months, that whole team was gone. One person was there for longer, and then she ended up quitting without a job too. She was just like, I can't do it anymore. I don't want to. I'm out. And I would do the same thing. I would say if a member of leadership barged into a planning meeting and is like, I want to be here because I want to talk about how these features are implemented and how this acceptance criteria is drawn up, I would stop the meeting and would say, what do you want here? What do you want to do here? Oh, just continue. Don't just ignore me. Well, we can't ignore you. What do you need here? We're going to stop until we service whatever you need so you can leave us back to the task at hand. Now, at a certain point with my tenure in the organization, that's what made the organization be as profitable as it was. And that's what built the software up until that point, because you had people that were willing to question things, and you had people that were willing to hold each other accountable, and you had people that were willing to bring their authentic selves to work and to basically take on the needs of the customers, their own responsibility, take responsibility for the needs of their customers. and make sure everything built was the right thing, that we were building the right thing, and we were building, everything we built was quality, and that we all were kind of moving in the same direction. All that kind of stuff that you hear, all the party line stuff that you hear when you talk about, building teams and representing the customer and that kind of stuff. But like all that changed. The company was sold twice when I worked there. Twice. And the first time was after my first child was born. The company got sold while I was out. And I was like, I'm going to take some time off. They're like, well, you're not going to get paid. I was like, I don't care. Well, you don't get disability. The women get like 60% of disability. Men get nothing. You don't get paid at all.
That's a whole other podcast.
But I was like, after taking time off, after the company got sold, while I was out of the office when the company got sold. And I came back after the company was going through this restructure, and they were changing CEOs and much stuff. And I had to work my way out of a significant hole regarding my commitment to the company to become a manager after the company got sold the first time. Because they were seriously questioning, like, oh, I don't know, like Brian took some time off for the birth of his first child. I don't know if he's really committed to the company.
Wow.
Like, that should have been the first indication to me, this is not the company it used to be.
Yeah.
Like, I should dust off my resume. And I think I was a team lead at that point. I think that's what my role was in the organization, which probably would have been a good point to move. But I didn't. But before the company got bought the first time, it was the type of company where, it was encouraged to bring your real, authentic self to work. And then over time, as the company evaporated into this capital investment owned entity, I really don't know what happened. I honestly, I wish I could make better sense of what happened, because it was all the same people that worked there. The CEO changed, so I guess that's a big change, right? CEO changed. And then all the C-level executives were the same, and most of the directors were the same for all the rest of my tenure at the company. So all that really changed was the board members changed and the CEO changed. And then that kind of trickled down into all the rest of the leadership of the company kind of becoming these shapeshifter type of, you know what I mean? Like your authentic self, your real self was not encouraged anymore. It was encouraged to wear a mask of what was expected of you and hide everything else.
Do you like memes? I love memes.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a meme out right now that says, if a company tells you that they're like a family, run.
Yeah.
And it's because, it can be toxic. And this company, they said that all the time. That was like their thing. Oh, we have awesome culture here. We're like a family. And yeah, you can be your authentic self. But I think the thing that they loved, and this is what's like a dysfunctional family, is you can be irreverent. You can tell inappropriate jokes in a little boys club behind closed doors. You can do those things. Yeah, that's authentic. You're funny and you're real. And we love it. The minute you start to question their decisions, the minute you start to question, hey, why are you in our session right now? Get out. Hey, why are you injecting work into our sprint? Our sprint's supposed to be locked. You start questioning the things that you're there. It's your job to do. It's your job to we're the guardian keeper. We're the framework guardians. But they don't let you do that. They're impeding you at every turn. And so when you start to question those things, they're like, oh, wait, we didn't mean be authentic in that way. We don't want to hear the truth. We don't want to hear that you're upset because we're not letting you do your job. No. We wanted you to be real in this way. Every company has a certain culture of, oh, be authentic, and we want to hear the truth, and we love transparency. Well, yeah, but up to a certain point.
Yeah.
Because you want us to be transparent in the ways that you're comfortable with. You don't want to hear for a second that we disagree with your roadmap. Or we disagree that Bob the architect should be telling us when our sprint should start. Bob's an architect. He doesn't get to say when our sprint, that kind of stuff. They don't want to hear that. No, just do what we say. Don't ask questions, just do what we say. So, yeah, it's this whole idea of, authenticity, but only up to a point.
Yeah.
And so then you change, and then, if that's no longer working for you, you have to leave. You have to get out. I find that in organizations, if I start to feel like speaking the truth is getting me in trouble, speaking the truth is not wanting to be heard anymore, I've got one foot out the door. That's when I'm like, oh, I can't do this anymore. If you're not going to listen to what I'm saying, then you don't trust my experience. I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's when I start to get frustrated.
Yeah, I would guess that would I would guess that would frustrate me too, to say I've been basically building and refining and leading teams for a certain amount of time. How long have you been? Oh, you haven't. That's not your job. That's kind of my takeaway from this, is that people confuse familiarity with a topic for expertise with a topic. And when I say people in this instance, I'm specifically targeting a certain organization, and it's probably just specific people with their egos that can't be like, well, I can't believe that somebody else might be an expert in something, and I am not the expert. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. I would like to offer anyone watching this, whatever 3 people that are watching this, like a way, 4 people know who you are. I'd like to offer them a specific way to help them understand and get out of the situation where, some way to vet out. Like, I'm going into an organization, help me vet out that people are like that. I don't really have, even now that I'm approaching 18 years in software development, something like that, 17, 18 years, when I've been a Scrum Master or a product owner, I come on new teams and I have to feel out team members and other people that interact with my team, architects or C-level executives or CTOs or whatever. I still have to kind of feel them out to be like, well, do you have our best interest in mind, or you have this little ego thing that I have to learn to get around or whatever?
Yeah.
You're really just that's a hell of a roadblock that I have to deal with, is your tiny little ego when I'm trying to accomplish all these things for the company.
Yeah. I think, not to diminish it in any way, but I think that, let's take a developer, a software engineer, for example. Their job is it's scientific. I mean, I'm going to code. I'm coding. Right. That is my job. There's some administrations they got to do on the side, and I got to close my tasks down. But the majority of their job is very A plus B equals C. Okay, done for the day. I'm out. Come back the next day. They do the same thing. For people in authority, right? And even as Scrum Masters or people managers, you're a servant leader, but people still look to you to help them make decisions or to help them figure out problems. And so you're in a position of authority, even though you're nobody's boss. And I think that in that vein, a developer they're going to come into an interview and meet with people and go, I don't really care if you have an ego. I don't really care if you're a jerk. I mean, that's going to affect people above me, I think, a little bit more. But if you're someone that you're going to be in charge of people and they're bringing their concerns to you, this person is going to be your arch nemesis. This is going to be the person that is going to inject things into your sprints, ruin your roadmaps. And so that you're going to have that to contend with. And I don't know, not to diminish that, yes, maybe some people, even if their jobs are just scientific and there's not a lot of emotion and reading people and having that self-awareness, that could piss you off too, and you may just be like, I'm not coming here. But if you can sense that in an interview, you should run. That should be your first sign.
This goes back to what we were talking about before we even started. Is there's a Scrum Master that I work with before. My way of operating is to align on thinking. I want to talk about the way you think about things, and I want to inquire to get your ideas out on the table, and then I want to tell you my ideas, and I want to talk about how our ideas differ and figure out where the common ground is and figure out where to go from there, so that we're all kind of logically moving forward in the same place. But I know another Scrum Master who will connect with people about the way they feel about things. And I feel that she's so, her method is so much more powerful than my method. I feel silly when I see it in action. I remember the first time I saw it in action, I was like, I don't even know why I even want to go forward in this career. This is so much better than what I do. But it's not, it's a completely different way of connecting with people. But I don't even know which method to use where you could try to mute the ego in order to get the best ideas out on the table I mean, either method could be sabotaged by someone with just a giant ego coming to the table. Doesn't matter. Like, feelings are not. It was an eye-opener to me because I was like, oh, there's other ways of aligning and getting everyone's buy-in, you know, to get past these roadblocks, you know, especially when it comes to like that hippo prioritization, the highest paid person in the room prioritization type of deal, which is basically what we're talking about here.
I think the way of our world and the way that it's going is we're getting really, really far away from I'm the leader, you do as I say. Yeah. And we're getting more into, I mean, look at what they're calling the Great Resignation. People are like, no, I'm out because I'm tired of being treated this way. I'm tired of not getting paid what I deserve. You know, people are starting to be more vocal about their happiness and their work-life balance. And now you had people that worked from home for a year that are like, I ain't going back to the office because you know what? I hate the commute. I hate this. I hate that. So people are more empowered now and are bucking authority more. And the leaders are going to have to start engaging more in the emotional side. And you cannot dismantle someone's ego without disarming them first. And if they think you're coming at them with just as big of an ego, they're gonna be like, get out of my face. So it's almost like people managers, scrum masters, people that do what we do. It's hard because we know what we're saying. We know what we're saying is right. We know how to do it. We know what we're talking about. But it's almost like we have to come at it going, listen, I know you think you know the best, but you know, you have to do it like she does it. You've got to disarm them and appeal to their emotional side and you almost have to like stroke their little ego and you are great and you are awesome. But you know what? You are in a position of leadership and your position is much more elevated. Why are you in the trenches with us? You're better than that, air quotes. Like you almost have to convince them, get out, we got it, that kind of thing. So if you find yourself stuck in a position where you're like, oh my God, I work for the biggest jerk on the planet, you do have to find a way to like disarm them, make them think you can trust our team, you can get out, let us do this. That's hard to do unless you've got like a scrum master like that. Who does see that side of people. The whole command and control, you do what I say, it's on its way out and it will keep going out. And so
well,
I know where I was going with that either.
Listen, well, I know exactly where you're going with that because we usually, when we get into the concepts of industrial age management applied to digital age thinking, that's when Ohm and I usually will say, we've had enough to drink. And that's enough podcasts for today. I think we're done and we're ready to wrap up. So, Jamie, you know, it's been fun. I feel like we could just keep going for like 2 more hours.
I know.
But we'll call it now because it's already close enough to your cutoff time as it is. So.
Yep. This was fun.